Hello. I'm looking forward to talking to you this evening. Got a lot to tell you, um, and it's all about speaking confidently in public. So it'd be great if you will just let me know that you're here. Just give me a little hi on the chat, and let me know that you're here and you're listening to me. And any questions that you want to ask, please do, because I'll be answering them throughout. Okay. Um, so yeah, just tell me that you're here. It'd be great to see you. Um, so why bother to learn about public speaking? That's something that I really feel passionate about and I want to talk to you about tonight. When we think about public speaking, we often imagine somebody on a podium, on a stage, talking to a large group of people. But of course, we speak in public all the time. We get opportunities to speak to people all the time. Hello, Emma. Hello, Sue. Nice to see you. Now, probably the most often you will be speaking in a networking situation. So I'm going to talk about all speaking opportunities and different techniques that might be useful to you. But I'm aware that some will work for others and some won't. Okay. So the reason I'm talking about this evening is that speaking is a skill that we all need. It affects every aspect of our business. Whether it's selling your story in a networking scenario, or speaking to prospective customers, or setting up a Facebook Live, or speaking to a small group. Um, you're speaking directly to people in the most impactful way. So, if you're selling your sales message, it's the most impactful way. And I'm hoping to persuade you this evening that nothing tops the power of speech. But first, I'm going to tell you a little story. Hello, Julie. Okay, so it will become relevant. You'll understand why I'm telling you this story as it goes on. So, first of all, I'm telling you a little story about me when I was 16. I was of an age where it was Thatcher's Britain. Getting a job wasn't easy. I'd left school with not brilliant qualifications, and I'd struggled to get that first job. And I finally got an interview. I think I'd had a couple of interviews that hadn't gone well. Um, and I got an interview, just a little admin job, but it was the one job I really wanted. Okay. And it seemed too good to be true. But I'd spent ages in preparation. I tried to think of every question they might ask me. I tried to think about what I might say about who I was and why I desperately wanted that job. And I dressed smartly in a then fashionable pencil skirt and blazer. I think they were probably the only smart clothes I owned at the time. And I waited at the bus stop. And I remember that sinking feeling as the early bus didn't arrive and the emergency option bus didn't arrive. And I walked home heartbroken. This was my big chance. As I arrived home, I was really devastated. And I arrived home and thinking, that's it. And my brother arrived at the same time on a motorbike. And he just passed his motorbike test. Um, and he persuaded me that it would be a good idea to take me to the interview on the back of his motorbike. I'd never been on the back of a motorbike before. He just passed his test. But he said, if you just go now, we can get there in time. And I figured I didn't have anything to lose. So it was terrifying. I had the helmet on, flattening my lovely hairstyle that I'd spent so long making. I pulled up my pencil skirt as high as I dare to get on the motorbike, and we set off. It was terrifying. And he got me there in about 10 or 15 minutes, and I had 5 minutes to go before the interview. And as I climbed off the bike, I realised that my hair was all flat, which I expected. But then I noticed that the split in my skirt had ripped all the way up the back, and it was revealing my underwear. So you can imagine how I felt. I'd finally got there for the interview for a really important job, and I needed a minor miracle. That one thing that would help me make a positive connection with those people in the interview room, to make me remembered in a positive way. So I'm going to stop the story there, and I'll come back to it a little bit later, and it will become relevant. You'll understand why. Okay. So this talk is about the art of speaking effectively, of being able to share something in a valuable way, but in your own unique way. With speech, you can galvanize a group of people. You can inspire, you can empower, you can persuade in a way that the written word can't. So I believe that nothing tops the power of speech. And it's not about having loads of confidence or being able to stand on a stage, and talk to large groups. It's about having something worth saying that people might be interested in. And I'm also really pleased because tonight I've got a little mini course that I'm going to give away free to everyone. So I'm going to put a link on the chat later so that you can pick that up if you want to. Okay, so tonight I'm going to be talking about why speaking in public is sometimes scary and what we can do about that, what to talk about and who you can talk to, important considerations to make before you start. I'm going to be talking about how to start off strongly, and the talk structure. There's a lot of different types of structure to a talk, but this is a basic one that you can use. We're going to look at useful techniques. And finally, I'm going to show you that you don't have to be a professional public speaker to get your message across and to make an impact. So just put your questions or any comments in the chat, and I will come to them in a little while and deal with anything that comes up. Okay. So why is speaking in public sometimes scary? And what can we do about it? Well, you might have heard the statistics. It's believed that 75% of people are frightened of public speaking. And I'm not sure what the percentage is, but I know it's almost the same of people who say that they fear public speaking more than they fear death, which is a bit extreme, really, isn't it, when you think about it? We're pack animals, we're human beings, but we're animals. And many of us don't want to stand out from the crowd. So, when we know that sometimes it's necessary for a business, it can still be really difficult. But advertising and marketing can only do so much. People very often buy into you before they buy your product. So it's, really important that people can see you and listen to you and get to know you a little bit. So just let me know in the chat box if any of you have struggled with this. If you've ever struggled with standing up at a networking event or talking in some other way, it'd be really interesting to know how many of you have done. All right, so this is how it works. Fear triggers our ancient fight or flight mechanism. You've probably heard about it before, and it pumps in adrenaline. So we've got this chemical in our system that's designed to help us to run away or fight back. But of course, it can give us the power to put energy and excitement into a talk. So actually, adrenaline is really important. But when it gets out of hand, sometimes it can make us shake a little or feel nervous. So what can we do about it? Well, the first thing we can do is embrace the nerves. Might seem silly, but I think anybody who does a lot of public speaking will tell you that they probably still have a little bit of nerves at the beginning of a talk. I've spoken to groups for years, and I still get those butterflies at the beginning. So it's something normal, it's natural. And what we need to do is accept it and try and harness it, because it can actually be useful to us. So the second thing that we can do is use that fear as a kind of motivation. When you're fearful of something, you practice it more, you perfect it more. If you practice something enough, then you can feel more confident about it, and then that fear can ebb away when you're doing it. So use it in a positive way. You may have heard of the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I bet that there'll be ladies in the group that's heard of this book, and it's quite an old book, but it's a goodie. And what it tells you is that most things that we do for the first time we're a bit anxious about, but as we've done them a number of times, it just becomes the norm. It just becomes a lot easier. So it's about getting out there and trying, really. Okay, so number 3, let your body help you. We all know, I guess, about breathing slowly and trying to calm our system down. But if you're in a position where you can take yourself off somewhere and nobody sees you, you can also do a bit of running on the spot. Sounds a bit crazy, but running up and down on the spot means that you can let go of some of that tension in your body. And you may have heard martial artists use something called a kiap. It's a shout. And again, it's for the same reason. You shout loudly and it lets some of the tension out. But obviously, that's not something to do if people can see you. Okay. Number 4, drink water. Sounds like a strange one. But when adrenaline kicks into your system, it will dry your mouth and it takes over. Whereas if you've had something to drink, if you've got something to drink to keep yourself hydrated, it will have a positive impact on you being able to speak better. And related to that, make sure that you've not got an empty stomach. Apparently, having an empty stomach can add to more anxiety. So, even if you don't feel like eating before you do a talk, just try and make sure you eat something. Just make sure that you've got something in your stomach. Okay, so number 6, it's going to sound a bit strange, but remember the power of vulnerability. Okay, audiences embrace people who are nervous and they want them to do well. So especially if you can find a way of acknowledging this, So you might say something like, as you can probably tell, I don't do a lot of public speaking, but this one was too good to miss. It shows that you're positive and you want to be there, but you're acknowledging those nerves. And this one is a really important one for me. I do this a lot. Number 7, find friends in the audience. Even if you're in a room with a load of people you don't know, there will be some people in there who will nod and smile at you. Or they look interested, they're animated. Talk to them. They're the people you should be focusing on and talking to. And it gives you some confidence and it gives you some strength. Okay. Number 8, maybe a bit obvious, have a backup plan. So if for any reason you're doing a talk that involves slides or something like that, just make sure you've got notes or cards that you can refer to if you need them. And I think it's quite good to have a question to ask the audience. If you're not quite ready with what you're trying to do or you can't find your cards, what you can do is introduce yourself and ask them a question, or better still, ask them to speak to the person next to them and talk to them about a subject. So you can get a little bit of feedback on the topic you're talking about sometime in the talk. And it just gives you a few minutes to sort out what you need to. Okay. And finally, when it comes to nerves, just try and focus on what you're talking about. Just try and focus on the subject. Remember, this matters. What you've come to talk about that day matters to you, and try and focus on that, which is what you probably know best. Okay, so now let's just have a look at what to talk about and who to talk to. So a talk needs to be something that's important to you, something that you've got a bit of passion for, something that you can demonstrate that passion for. It's not about being a smooth talker. It's about having something worth saying, something that people are interested in or that will help people. Okay. I mean, sometimes you might be asked to talk on a topic that actually you wouldn't have chosen, but you can usually find something in there that you can feel passionate about, or you can take it from an angle that you're interested in. Think about the common questions that you answer in your business now, the common problems that you solve daily. There are regular questions that come up, and that your audience are interested in those topics. So try and focus on them, but try not to sell to people. Talking establishes you as an expert sometimes. It gives you some credibility, but just mention your company briefly. Don't talk about it in too much detail. And who can you talk to? Well, you get lots of opportunities. And, if you talk somewhere, very often somebody will say, that was a nice talk. Why don't you come and talk to my group? So obviously, business networks, we all get an opportunity to talk then. You can talk to things like WI groups or ladies groups. A lot of these sorts of clubs like to have somebody coming out and just breaking up the evening and doing a short talk. So there's usually lots of opportunities. But of course, there's Facebook Lives and there's doing webinars on Zoom, that sort of thing that you can put on your website. And, all of the things I've mentioned are free. They don't cost you anything. They just cost you a bit of time. So, I think when you start looking for places and opportunities to talk, you find them. Okay. So this just brings me to important considerations before you begin. Okay. And I think before I go on to that, I'm just going to take a little look at the chat and just respond to anything that you've come up with. So it's nice to see you, Emma and Sue and Julie. Let's have a look. Oh, some of these things are resonating with Emma. Okay. Oh, and Emma likes the book. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Oh, right. So that's it's a good tip. Yeah. Okay. So, yes, I'm going to talk about important considerations before you begin. So if you're talking to a group, just consider the audience. Just think about what their interests or their needs are, their commonalities, and try and tailor your language and give them examples that suit them. You want these to, be topics you're talking about that people can identify with, so they can identify with you. So if you're talking to a group of mums, then you would make sure that they know you're a mum. And you might talk a little bit about that and about the challenges of being a mum. If you're using technology, practice, use it repeatedly, and always have a plan B, because it can still let you down. I've looked a lot at TED Talks. I don't know if anyone's heard of those. TED Talks is like an organisation to promote public speaking, and you'll find loads of them on the internet. And the idea of a TED Talk is you deliver a talk in 18 minutes, and you get some fantastic talks on there, great examples to look at and sort of copy from. But, most of them don't use slides or visual aids. Most of them don't. So just try and always have that backup plan in case if you are using something like that, it doesn't work. All right. So, this is an important one. So sometimes we have a lot we want to get across. We have a lot to say, but try not to overstuff your talk. Try not to talk about too much in one go, because what you end up doing is just skimming over a number of topics. So an example of that would be, I do a talk sometimes about cognitive thinking errors, and you'll know what they are because one of them is catastrophizing. It's something that we do that isn't really helpful. It's a thinking error, but there are lots of thinking errors. So rather than talking about them all, normally I focus on catastrophizing because most people can relate to it, and I explain the impact of catastrophizing and what you can do to actually manage it. So don't try and cover everything in one talk. Okay. So if you're skimming through lots of topics, you're not really making much of an impact. So try and break it down. Okay. So this is really important if you can do it. If possible, speak to people in the room beforehand. Mingle. Mingle if you can. Go early, make a connection with people and establish a rapport. You know, it's really useful to be able to mention names throughout your talk. It's really useful to be able to refer to a conversation about a talk. So when you arrive, you ask people, what brought you here tonight? You know, what are you interested in finding out? And maybe you can use that during the talk or when you've got a difficult moment. Okay. So finally, with this particular section, practice and preparation are key. Really, really important. Years ago, I went on a course on public speaking, and it was for a local authority, and we all arrived and we'd all been told to prepare a 5-minute presentation to start, and they filmed it. And it was so fantastic. It was powerful. We were all nervous. We all made a mess of it. But what I noticed when they played mine back was I had my hand on my hip the whole time. I was like talking and I had this hand on the hip all the time. I have no idea why. But instantly I saw it. We all had a bit of a laugh about it. We all gave feedback to each other. So if you can do that with somebody, if you can get somebody to give you some feedback, or film it, filming it's quite important, then you know you can improve your talk. But that practice and preparation is really key. And I'm very close to launching a course myself that will give that audience feedback and experience. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Okay, so I'm just going to have a quick look, just check if there's any more comments. Oh, Emma, seems to be a lot resonating with you. Okay. Hi, Julie. Right. So now I'm going to consider starting strongly. Starting strongly. We have a lot to deliver in a talk very often, but it's really important to focus on that first sentence. You know, that first thing that you say when everyone stops talking and you speak. And that's the most difficult part of giving a talk. You know, that's when you're most likely to feel nervous. So practice that bit particularly. You know, make sure that first sentence, that first paragraph of your talk, you know very well, and learn it off pat. And there are different ways you can start. So I'm going to give you some examples here. So you can deliver at the beginning of your talk a dose of drama, a story. So it might be something like, I was born in Liverpool in 1966, and I was busy enjoying my childhood when at 6 years of age, my mother tragically died, and we embarked on a plan to emigrate to America. Okay, so it starts the story and it makes people begin to listen. So another way of doing this is to show a really compelling slide or photo. Photo tells 1,000 words. So that's a good way of starting and maybe talking a little bit about what's going on in the photo. Or you can ignite some curiosity by asking a question that might make people think about why you're there and what you're going to be talking about. So something like, what should the role of money be in our society? That's an example. You can also start with a tease. So, you know, hello everyone, I've got a treat for you. Some free information that by the end of this talk will give you an advantage over your competitors. So again, just a tease, just to get them listening and thinking about what this talk might be about. Or you can share an interesting or shocking fact or statistic. And I think this is quite a good one, because if you've got a group of people that all have a commonality, then you can think about a statistic that would shock them or would be relevant to them. So if it's a group of mums, it might be about how many hours a day a mum actually works looking after their children, something like that. And also, finally, another way you could start this talk is by explaining what's in it for them. So it could be something like, I can show you how you can climb the career ladder without ruining your social life. Something that they might be able to relate to at the beginning. Okay. So this brings me to structure. So you need a structure when you're writing a talk. And so, of course, you begin with an introduction, but I think it's important to have some context there. So I've got a really good example. Emma's not with us tonight, Emma from Tropic. I'm sure she'll probably catch this up because she normally does. Emma gave an amazing example at one of the networking evenings that I thought was really useful for me as an example. And that was that Emma began talking about her past and how she always struggled to find products for her skin, and how she had some skin problems and how she'd never managed to find something that would work. And then it worked very well in walking us through into Tropic and why she chose Tropic. And so, I'm just hearing she's watching on replay. She's in a meeting now. Brilliant. I'm really glad she's going to hear this. So I was really impressed when Emma began her talk, because she gave us some context as to why she is in the business she's in, and what it means to her. So, yeah, it makes it an issue that then matters. So, yeah, good example there from Emma. Now you go on to the main concepts of your talk. So you've got your intro and your context, and then the main concept, the main story or information that you want to give to somebody. But then the next step, I think, is quite important, the practical implications. So these are the bits of information that tell your audience why your talk is important to them, why that product or idea works in practice, how it works, how it could help them. Okay. And then, of course, with any talk, we've got a conclusion. And if possible, I think it's quite good to include a call to action, so that you're concluding your talk, but you want to inspire them to do something now. You want them maybe to add you on Facebook or contact you. But, you want to give them something that they can do. Okay. So now I'm just considering some of the useful techniques that might be useful to you. So there's different ways of giving a talk. There's different sort of styles and genres. You can narrate a story. And as I said, this is quite powerful. I think this is a really good way of doing it. People love self-exposure. They're quite nosy, and they like to know about you. They like to know a little bit about your background. So, yeah, a bit of self-exposure, narrate your story, explore why the topic or the product is so relevant to the audience as well. Maybe explore that. Why are they there? What's brought them here? And why would this product be so important to them? And also, you can begin to build an idea in people's heads. Sometimes you have to build an idea from the ground up. So this is a way of doing it. So if we apply this to my speaking in public, this is how I would build an idea from the ground up. Well, you and I know that when you avoid conversation in business, you lose connection with people. And if you lose connections with people, you will kill interest in you and your product. And if you kill interest in you and your product, you can't increase sales. And if you can't increase sales, you can't grow your business. So you see how you build up from one thing and you take it to a point where it becomes more relevant. Okay. So you can also offer some vivid examples. a bit of humour, anything that will help you connect. And I think what's quite useful as well is recruiting a bit of third party validation. So what I mean is, I might say something like, my colleagues at Lancaster University and I have worked for 10 years on developing speaking strategies. Um, Again, you're bringing in the fact that you're working with a university, and Emma from Tropic, that's a good example again. She might say something like, the geniuses at Tropic have spent 10 years developing this product so that skincare is no longer an issue. There's no longer a problem. So you can get that validation from somebody that perhaps people know, a recognized name that people know. Okay, so another technique that I think is really good, and that's revelation, revealing, how a product works or how a service might work. So, a demo. So people love before and afters, don't they? They love the before and after. And you get a lot of companies that use them, especially fitness, weight loss companies. But you can use them in lots of ways. So you might show how you beginning to use a product, and then the end result might be a really useful slide or something that you can actually demonstrate when you're with a group of people. I think a lady I spoke to the other day, she had a mock-up of how her restaurant was going to look when it was completed, and it was great. It looked fantastic. The restaurant's not there, but it gave us something to engage with, and it stimulated other senses. And that brings me on to visuals in general, really. A lot of talks don't have any visuals at all, and I think a lot of the talks we do probably won't have visuals. And in a way, they take the emphasis away from the speaker. And if you're trying to make a connection with somebody, it actually gets in the way. I know a lot of people like to hide behind visuals as well. So if you are going to use visuals of any kind, slides, keep it to a minimum. Make sure they're impactful. You might have a picture of your team, just one maybe, so we can set the scene of what your company is like, or a photo of you actually doing the job that you do. And you can set a scene. At the beginning, I talked about my 16-year-old self. There could have been a photograph of me, 16, which would have made people connect a little bit more. A picture tells 1,000 words, as I say. I used to do some talks for the local authority. And what I used to talk about was littering in Preston. And I had these slides that had always made a massive impact. And what they were, we had a slide of a back alley full of fly tipping, dirty nappies, poo, you name it. And when I put it up, I would say, this is a standard back alley in Preston. These are, one of the types of things we have to deal with. And people would be shocked. And then I would show them the slide 2 days later, when the councilmen had gone in and cleaned it and made it look great. And everyone was really pleased with that. But then where the impact came in is I showed them a slide 2 days after that. And that was 2 days after the cleanup. And there were mattresses and sofas and dog poo and nappies. And it really shocked people that in 2 days after the council had cleaned something up, people could behave in that way and leave all that rubbish out again. So you can use photos and visuals in a really impactful way that make people think. Okay. So one of the things I just wanted to mention to you were diversion tactics. There's sometimes a point where you're speaking and maybe you get quite hot, you're feeling a bit nervous, and you want to kind of diffuse the atmosphere for yourself and just take a little bit of emphasis off you. And, if you're really, really hot, you might say, oh, can somebody open that window at the back, please? I'm really, really hot. And everyone who looks at you and thinks you look quite warm will understand why then. They'll think it's just literally the heat in the room. And everyone sort of looks around, looks at each other, and it breaks that, that tense feeling. And one of the best things you can do is ask a question. Ask somebody near to you, ask somebody you've spoken to, or ask somebody you don't know, what brought you here tonight? What you're hoping to learn, And again, it becomes more of a conversation and less of you doing a talk at the front. Okay, hi Lynn, nice to see you. So yeah, it's a good diversion tactic, sorry, and there's a few that you could use and develop for yourself so that you can bring the tension down in the room and make it more of a conversation. But I can't stress enough that you use your own speaking style. Don't try and be someone else because it doesn't come across in a natural way. So just try and be you. You don't have to be a polished professional speaker. I'm not the best speaker in the world, but I can get my message across and I can show that I'm passionate about something. So we can all do that. Try not to read from a script. Just try and have some bullet points that you can use to help remind you what you need to say. And voice. Voice is really important. Voice creates so much impact, and this is why for me it's so much more powerful than the written word. You can create a connection with people where people feel they trust you. You can engage with people. You can show curiosity in the tone of your voice or understanding. You can demonstrate empathy. You can, show people by what you say and the way you look at them and your voice that you get it. You understand the difficulties they're having. You can show that empathy, which you can't really do in the written word in the same way. And for me, I can show my excitement. I can show that I'm really, really excited about what I do. Again, really difficult to do that in the written word. And I can show that conviction that what I'm saying, I believe. So I don't think anything tops the power of speech. So I'm just checking, just having a look at what people are writing, and there seems to be a lot of people resonating with what I'm saying. And yes, Lynn, connections really important, aren't they? And that's why I think being able to talk, even to just small groups is important. So I'm just going to now look at questions. Now, if you're giving a talk or if you're at a networking event, you usually do get some questions. If you're uncomfortable with people asking questions throughout your talk, just politely ask them to ask at the end, or tell them you'll come back to them at the end. Some people really struggle when they lose that flow if the questions keep coming at them. So it's perfectly normal to say, can I come back to you on that? I'll answer that question at the end. It's perfectly acceptable to do that. And if you're asking for questions and there aren't any, again, this is about planning. This is about being ready. If I was doing a talk about public speaking and nobody asked a question at the end, then I would ask a question. I would say something like, has anyone here had a bad experience when speaking in public? Will anybody share something with me? Okay, so you can still end that talk on the sort of Q&A atmosphere to it. Okay, so I'm going to finish up shortly, but I just wanted to tell you that I am going to put in the chat at the end today a link to a little free mini course that you can have a go at, and it's just to help you with your elevator pitch, which is your short talk at the end that you might use in a networking situation. Okay, sometimes it's 30 seconds, sometimes it's a minute, but it's quite useful. So please download it, have a go with it, see how you get on, and ask me any questions if you want to. If anybody leaves any questions in the chat this evening, if I haven't answered them during the chat, I will do at the end. Okay, so in summary, what we've covered this evening is we've looked at why speaking in public is scary and what we can do about it. what to talk about and who to, how to manage anxiety and nerves, and how to begin strongly so that we feel more confident. We've looked at structure and techniques. And so I hope that's been quite useful to you. And so finally, I'm just going to quickly return to my little story of Anne, age 16. And there I am. I'm actually at Leyland Printing Company. And I'm in the car park, and my skirt is ripped right at the back, and I'm trying to decide what to do. And my brother says to me, look, we're here. Just go in, just do it. So I swiveled my skirt around. I don't know if you remember doing this, ladies, because sometimes you had to do this. I'd spin my skirt around, so the split was down one leg, okay? And I took my blazer off, and I sort of strategically placed the blazer over the split, okay? And I went up to reception. And when I entered, the receptionist said, oh, lovely, you've arrived. What we're going to do is give you a tour of the factory before you have your interview. And this worried me. I could just about walk in a very odd way, holding a blazer over my split. And I was hoping that I'd just be able to walk in a room and sit down. But now I had to walk around a factory. So I walked very slowly, I think much to the irritation of the person that was showing me around. And I managed to keep that blazer strategically placed. There were a lot of men in that factory staring at me. And by the time I actually got to the interview room, I felt exhausted because I'd been trying to walk in the nicest possible way, cover everything up. So I sat down and the interview started, and like any other interview, we talked about qualifications and all that sort of thing. And then there came a point in the interview where the lady asked me, have you ever had a challenge or a problem that you've solved and that you could share with us, and just share how you overcome the problem? And I went completely blank. And so I decided to just tell them about my morning. I told them about preparing for a job I really wanted, getting early to the bus stop, missing those buses, about the terrifying journey on the back of my brother's motorbike, and how when I arrived, my skirt was all ripped and my hair was all flat. And you know what? I felt the room warm to me. I was showing my vulnerability. And yes, I did get the job. And I've still got the letter now that they sent me. It was my first ever job. And this is one of the things they wrote on it. They said, you showed the kind of perseverance, determination, and problem-solving skills that we want in an employee. But you also spoke with passion about why you wanted the role, and you engaged us in your story. So I always feel a little bit emotional when I read that. But, it proves my point. 16, not very eloquent, but actually managing to engage somebody in my experience and my story. So I think we can all do it. So I want to thank you for listening, ladies. I hope you found it useful. I hope you use the download, and I'm going to put in the chat box. But most of all, I hope I've persuaded you that nothing tops the power of speech. I hope you all have a go. Thanks for listening.